Well, that was a weird one. Welcome to The Haunted Beard, everybody. My name is Jake. Thank you for joining me. Today I want to give you my review for Cuckoo. This was one of my more anticipated horror movies of the year. But real quick before I get into it, I just want to give a quick shout out to all my patrons. So thank you to Milos, Dreamer Bailey, Rick Rigdon, Amanda Ramey, Kathy Bennett, Chris Johnson, Phil Smith, Matt McComas, Lorraine, Rick Grush, and Awful Altars. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for your support and generosity and help growing the beard. Appreciate it very, very much. All right, with that being said, let's get into my thoughts on Cuckoo. Cuckoo tells the story of 17-year-old Gretchen, played by Hunter Schafer, who moves with her family to the Bavarian Alps in Germany to this resort. And she slowly starts to discover that things are not as they seem. Of course, something sinister is going on beneath the surface of this place. Cuckoo was directed by German filmmaker Tillman Singer. This is actually his second feature film, and I have a review for his debut film on my channel. It's called Lose, and that was a film that I didn't love, but I saw a lot of potential in this guy, and there were definitely aspects about it that I thought worked quite well and really stuck out to me. And you can start to see now with the second film some of his directing style kind of really starting to emerge. And if I could oversimplify and really use one word to kind of summarize this guy's flavor, it would be weird. And Cuckoo is a weird film, but it is a good kind of weird, as there is a lot of this here that I really enjoyed. And Singer does a good job with the atmosphere here in this film, as this is a movie that it feels similar to some other films like this where, you know, a character goes to some location, some wellness center, some sort of foreign resort area and realize something sinister and dark is happening under the surface. We've seen movies with a similar type of a setup, but what he does with that setup and how he executes it and ultimately where the story goes, I don't think I've ever quite seen anything like this. And as I said, this is a weird movie, but that is, I think, one of the film's biggest strengths. Just that overall vibe and feeling to it. And it makes itself stand out because of how just kind of awkward and different it is compared to other films that have a similar type of a setup. And there's a handful of elements that really contribute to that atmosphere. First of all, this is a film that is unclear of what time period it's set in. In some ways, it feels like a more modern day setting, but in other ways, it feels like something back in the 70s or 80s. And so there's some ambiguity with that, which I really liked. Some of the technology is older. And so you kind of feel like you're in a foreign time because you're not really sure when we are, which I really like that there's mystery and ambiguity within that element in the movie. As soon as Gretchen and her family get to this place, pretty much immediately, we just kind of know something feels off. It's one of those films where characters arrive at this new location and you just know something doesn't feel right. We don't know what, but we just know something is off. And so a large part of this movie, again, has that very kind of weird, a little bit unsettling, ominous, mysterious sort of atmosphere to it that I really enjoyed. One of the other things contributing to the atmosphere is the performance by Dan Stevens. He plays the guy, Herr Koenig, I think is his name. He's the German guy who is in charge of the resort. And man, his performance in this is pretty great. He's one that really gives off this sinister type vibe, but just subtle enough to where it doesn't immediately alert the characters within the film. But we as the audience can kind of tell pretty much right away, yeah, there's something wrong with this guy. He's up to no good for sure. But man, his performance is really good. He just sells that type of character. This guy who has a secret, this guy who's up to no good, this guy who has something twisted and shady going on and is hiding something, and we just got to figure out what it is. And with his performance in this film, and then also Abigail that came out earlier in the year, he's one of those guys that's quickly becoming like borderline must-see type stuff. I think he's just really good in here and totally sells all the vibes and everything that he's going for. I thought he was great. In addition to him, you have Hunter Schafer, who is our main character, and this was my first experience with her. I hadn't seen any of her work prior to this, and she really impressed me. I thought she did an excellent job. There's some more emotional and dramatic depth to her character. There's some stuff going on involving her mother and just some conflict and some tension between her father and what is her new stepmother and stepsister as well. And what I like about her character, and this really speaks to her performance and also how the character was written, is that there's a good balance between her being kind of this young, rebellious sort of I want to do my own thing teen, but also somebody who you can understand and sympathize with and really kind of root for. And I like that there's that balance there, that she's not just this basically screw you all, I know more than you do, I'm smarter than you teen. There's part of that in there, but then there's also this girl who's going through something very difficult and is in this kind of crazy situation and is trying to navigate just craziness. And so because of the situation she's in, you just kind of can't help but sympathize with her and you root for her. And so I really liked her character. I thought Hunter Schafer did a really solid job. I really hope to see her in more horror films. She's got quite a bit of talent, and so hopefully she does some more horror work in the future. I will definitely be looking out for it. And Cuckoo is a unique horror film. One, because of where the story ultimately goes, but two, because of the atmosphere, but also because of the kind of horror movie that it is. And there's, throughout the first 2/3 of the movie, I was trying to figure out, okay, what type of horror film, what sort of subgenre are we really working in here? Because there's parts of this that feel like a psychological horror, some of a supernatural horror, almost little bit of slasher vibes. Is it kind of a monster creature feature? And so there's kind of a handful of different flavors working together here that I think ultimately work together quite well. Now, I will say this, for me personally, Cuckoo isn't very scary, but that's not necessarily a criticism or a negative. That's just kind of more of an observation, because I think what we ultimately get is still pretty satisfying. And so there's one scene earlier on in the film where Gretchen's on a bicycle and she's trying to escape from something that leans into more kind of scary horror, but a lot of this is horror of the more, again, I'm going to use the word weird and bizarre variety, with some mystery to it, some kind of creepiness, and just all around odd kind of vibe. And ultimately, the situation that the characters find themselves in is pretty horrific. But in terms of how it's executed, it's really just trying to go more for like, what in the world? This is weird, wacky, crazy stuff kind of vibe, which I largely enjoyed. And so it's really trying to go more for those types of vibes, and really it executes some good tension in some moments as well. But it's trying to go more for that sort of flavor than just straight up scary stuff. The first 2/3 of the film, I think, are the best part. And while I wouldn't call the last third and really the climax and the ending a disappointment, it's not quite at the same level for me. And the reason being is because at right about the hour mark, maybe a little bit after, you get this scene where there's just this big exposition dump. And you kind of just get told, here's sort of what's going on, and here's what we're doing, and here's kind of a lot of just information and answers to the major mystery. And I wish that they would have handled that a little bit better. I wish that they would have prolonged some of that mystery and suspense till closer towards the end. Because while the first 2/3 of the film are, again, very strange and off-putting and bizarre, the last third plays out in a more kind of standard, straightforward sort of way. And I wish that once we would have gotten that reveal, I wish the film would have even leaned into the weirdness even more so, and just kind of really taken it over the top. But I feel that it kind of pulls back a little bit and plays out a little bit safe in the final third of the film. And it by no means ruined my experience at all. This is still a good film and one that I would recommend. I just wish they would have handled the last third a little bit differently. I think it could have been more effective if they would have kind of revised and tweaked some things a little bit. But as it sits, it's still a good time. And if you haven't seen this, I would say definitely check it out if you like your horror films more of the what the heck was that type of variety. I think Cuckoo is going to be pretty satisfying for you. So for me personally, overall, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. And yeah, those are my thoughts. So hit me up down below. Let me know your thoughts on this one. Would be very curious to hear from you. Like always, thank you so much for watching. Greatly appreciate it. If you got anything out of this video, go ahead and do me a favor and do not click that subscribe button unless you want to be haunted by the beard.